That's right, you're watching Insights from Africa, and today we're delving into the G20. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa is leading the G20 this year, and that carrying the hope that more focus will be given to the continent. This comes as countries across the globe are grappling with trade issues, as US President Donald Trump has announced widespread tariffs, leading many nations to look for alternative trading partners. In Africa, this could give the African Continental Free Trade Agreement a boost. Earlier, I sat down with Lutando Vuba, the head of international trade at the Business and Commercial Banking Unit at Standard Bank, to find out if having the G20 presidency in African hands, while globally trade comes under pressure, creates a unique environment for the African Continental Free Trade Agreement to flourish. Here's what he had to say.
While I would caution around that assessment being very close to reality, what threatens that reality is just where we find ourselves as the continent in terms of our industrial and infrastructure capacity, which directly is the big one for me, one of the biggest non-tariff barriers for the rollout of the AfCFTA. And remember, we have the regional economic communities and regional customs unions, which have tried to start to tap into what one of the intentions of the AfCFTA is, right, which is to liberalize trade through zero tariffs on most goods and enable free movement and have protocol around investment, which is a key consideration for even African investors and also offshore. And then when it comes to then particular intention around women and youth participating in this trade. So that intention and vision, I think, makes sense. It is completely speaks to, if you look at Africa being projected to be the youngest population in about 5 to 10 years, and the what that will mean from a workforce, but also what that workforce must be absorbed into. At the same time, we find ourselves where the requirement for the infrastructure spend for Africa to actually develop, in terms of its infrastructure at the rate that it should, is around $100 billion a year, and we're only doing about 10% of that.
We need to move at scale and at speed, right?
Yeah.
If we're really going to make the African Continental Free Trade Agreement work for us.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's where the policy piece comes in, right? And if we can harmonize around these critical areas around what we need to shift in policy, it really then gets us, it doesn't become a one voice sort of steering a direction, but it really gets, I think, this theme around this is what makes sense for emerging economies, therefore South Africa and the rest of sub-Saharan Africa.
Because do we really risk this becoming just a good idea and that it never actually comes into play because we kind of, like you highlighted, with the infrastructure spend, we keep kind of falling behind. It's a wonderful idea to get everyone together and on the same page, but that takes a lot of work. I think if we look at our Government of National Unity, we can see just how that plays out. It's really difficult to get everyone on the same page. And so there is this worry that maybe the African Continental Free Trade Agreement just becomes this thing of it was a great idea, and that would be really sad, I guess.
No, indeed. I think when it comes to FCFTA, what is encouraging is that you have these member states having agreed to signed an agreement, therefore agreed to the intentions of the free trade area and what it will realize. And you're slowly starting to see it really being implemented and not just talk.
Because this is speaking to the next phase really for Africa, right? We'll talk about the potential of Africa. And that's often what happens at meetings or gatherings like the G20. We talk about the potential of Africa. And yet now we need to start showing the impact that Africa can have. And the hope is that really will be done this year with Cyril Ramaphosa having that G20 presidency. Do you see that translating? Is he pushing enough that, yes, see potential in Africa, but also see the great things that are happening on this continent, so that you can have confidence, so that you can invest and really see Africa for what it is? Yeah,
no, true. I want to bring you to the Brazilian G20, and particularly the B20 and what they did. So Brazil, as part of their G20 year, the B20 actually looked at the same task forces that are currently there for the B20 in SA. But there was a particular focus to say, okay, we need the two pressing points. Our SMEs, too many of them there's too much attrition there. What do we need to do for them? And so one of the measures that they instituted, which became, like regulation in country, was how quickly SMEs get paid. So they actually instituted that in place, and it was one of the practical things that actually came out of that. Another one that I particularly was excited to read about was that when looking at the finance and infrastructure task force, they then said, okay, we are talking about how what must be done around enabling more finance and then infrastructure. Let's actually look at projects in the country. Let's not look for new projects, but the current ones underway, and how do we rally and mobilize financial capital towards that.
I know it's early days,
Yep.
But we are going to come to December and we're going to have to rate our participation in G20
Yep.
and all the things we set out. What are some of those practical examples you'd like to see come to the fore come December when we hand over the reins to the US?
I think it'll be good to actually see the recommendation, not just the recommendation, but the intention of this Cost of Capital Commission actually being put in place with a very clear mandate in what it will do and how it will enable the work of looking at cost of capital, especially for emerging economies and developing markets, and something that has a continuance, when the US takes over the presidency. We've been very encouraged to see in the B20 representation from the US, very committed to the process, and I think that gives a good sort of intention of some of the recommendations, especially coming out of that B20 that will be carried through into their presidency.
Do you believe that from a business perspective, we're also all singing from the same hymn sheet, if we can say that, about the potential and the work being done in Africa to really encourage and put forward a message that Africa is open for business, and we've got some challenges, but this is how we're working on it, etc. Do you believe business is supporting this idea? Are you getting that sense in the B20 task forces that are out there?
Yeah, look, we at the B20 launch, my takeaway it was that there's general positive and commitment towards what the intention is of the B20 focus this year. In addition to, sleeves are rolled up, how do we actually bring our contribution to it?
Luthando Vuba is the head of international trade at the Business and Commercial Banking Unit at Standard Bank. And he ended off highlighting the role of the B20 in the G20. And while we've covered many themes related to the G20 on today's show, from trade to energy to the need for Africa to be included in the global agenda, there are many, many more focus areas. One in particular is digital transformation, and a business that is part of the task force in the B20 looking at this is Naspers. Here's the company's CEO, Phuthi Mahanyele-Debengwa, on what the task force wants to achieve.
Technology is rewriting the rules of the global economy. The ambition of our task force is clear. We're bridging divides, ensuring that we're ready for the future of work, and shaping policies that harness tech for good. From SMMEs to multinationals, we're building a future where digital access means economic opportunity. Let us transform potential into progress.
On that note, we've come to the end of this episode of Insights from Africa. But if you're hungry for more, you can go to Business Day TV's YouTube channel. Under the Insights from Africa tab, you'll find not only this episode, but all our previous shows as well. And you can watch and enjoy those at your leisure. And then once you've done that, be sure to find us on social media. We usually drop little teasers there for you to enjoy. And it lets you stay up to date on our content as well. So look for Business Day TV on LinkedIn, X, and TikTok. But for now, from me, Bronwyn Seaborn, and the rest of the team, it's goodbye. Insights from Africa is brought to you in partnership with Standard Bank.